Hello, and welcome to how to implement continuous integration and continuous delivery, or CICD. As a Fabric data engineer or developer, you're responsible for designing, building, and maintaining Fabric items that store, process, and analyze data. You collaborate with your team to release changes from development through production in different Fabric workspaces. With multiple engineers working on projects, there's a need to incrementally release and integrate Fabric item changes and move those changes through a deployment process where they can be tested and quickly released. Lifecycle management in Fabric lets you do this. Lifecycle management in Fabric uses deployment pipelines and source control integration to help you achieve continuous integration and continuous delivery, also known as CI/CD. You can integrate Fabric with version control systems like GitHub and Azure DevOps, and to improve your delivery process and integrate automated testing, by the end of the section, you'll know how to work with source control in Fabric, how to use Fabric deployment pipelines, and how Fabric REST APIs can be used in CI/CD automation. If developers work on separate code branches on their local machines for long periods of time and only merge their changes to the main code base once their work is finished, this increases the likelihood of conflicts and bugs that might only be identified in later development stages and can slow down delivery of features to users. Continuous integration helps you avoid bugs and code failures and lets you continuously develop and release functionality. In CI, you frequently commit code to a shared code branch or trunk in a version control system, and once it's merged, changes are validated by a build process and automatically tested. Because of this, conflicts between new and existing code are identified earlier in the development process and are easier and faster to fix. Continuous development, or CD, happens after continuous integration. Once CI is complete, code is deployed to a staging environment where more automated testing is performed before code is released into production. Continuous deployment is a process that automatically releases updates into the production environments through structured deployment stages once they have passed automated tests. When you and members of your team are each responsible for developing and maintaining different parts of your Fabric environment, a best practice is to work in isolated development environments until you're ready to combine your development efforts and publish your changes to a particular pre-production environment. When you're ready to publish your changes, you need to make sure that your changes don't break existing code or interfere with changes made by other developers. There's also a need to ensure that code changes are saved and can be reverted if there are any issues. The built-in continuous integration and continuous delivery capabilities in Fabric can help facilitate this. Continuous integration and continuous delivery is a process for integrating code contributions from multiple developers into a main code base. Contributors are frequently committed and automated processes are built, and we can test the new code. Code is continuously moving into production, reducing feature development time. Managing the life cycle of Fabric items using CI/CD has two parts: integration and deployment. Integration is implemented using Git. Deployment is implemented using Fabric deployment pipelines. Automation of deployment or integration is implemented using Fabric REST APIs. Git lets your team collaborate using branches and provides version control. It helps you manage incremental code changes and see code history. Deployment pipelines let you promote code changes to different environments like deployment, test, and production. Lastly, Fabric REST APIs enable automation and let you programmatically manage the CI/CD processes. To support continuous integration, you frequently merge your code changes into a shared repository. The shared repository is part of version control system called Git or either Azure DevOps. Version control is a way of managing changes to code over time. It lets you track code revisions, contribute collaboratively to code development, and revert to prior versions of code if needed. GitHub and Azure DevOps are the version control systems that are supported in Fabric. These version control systems allow you to create a copy of a code repository that's called a branch. You can use the branch to work on your own code independently from the main version of your team's code. When you have changes to submit, you commit them to the repository, and then you merge your changes with the main code branch. Integration with version control is at the workspace level in Fabric. You can use version items you develop within that workspace. A Fabric workspace is a shared environment that accesses live items. Any changes made directly to the workspace overwrites and affects all other workspace users. A best practice is for you to develop in an isolated workspace outside of the shared live workspace. In your own protected workspace, you can connect to your own branch and sync content from the live workspace into your protected workspace, and then commit your changes back to your branch or your main branch. The first step in implementing Git integration is to set up a Git repository in either GitHub or Azure DevOps. The repository is the central location for storing and managing items. Next, within the workspace that you want to connect to your repository, you'll want to establish a connection to the repository from Git Integration option in the workspace settings. When you connect a workspace to Git, you create or select an existing Git repository branch to sync with. Fabric then syncs the content between the workspace and Git so they have the same content. After you connect to the repository, the workspace shows a Git status column indicating the sync state of items in the workspace compared to the items in the remote branch, as shown here on the left. The source control icon shown here on the top shows the number of items that are different between the workspace and the repository. To synchronize the workspace and the repository when you make workspace changes, synchronize them with the Git branch using the Changes selection in the source control window, as shown here on the right. And when new commits are made in the Git branch, synchronizing them with your workspace using the Update selection in the source control window, as shown here also on the right. Changes that you make to a workspace when you're doing development work affect all your workspace users, so it's a best practice to work in isolation outside of the shared workspaces. To keep your development work isolated from shared workspaces, you can develop using a separate isolated workspace and using client tools like Power BI Desktop for reports and semantic models, or VS Code for notebooks. In both scenarios, your feature development work should take in a dedicated branch instead of a main code branch. This makes it easy for multiple developers to work on features without affecting the main branch. Create a dedicated branch and issue pull requests to pull changes from the branch into the main branch by using a separate isolated workspace for development. Remember, too, that when using client tools for development, the process is similar to that of when you're developing in the Fabric web interface. Pipelines enable a continuous integration, continuous deployment, or CICD approach that ensures content is updated, tested, and regularly refreshed. Pipelines are an efficient and durable way to automate the movement of content through the development, test, and production stages of the content development lifecycle. Fabric deployment pipelines help you deploy your Fabric items across different environments like development, test, and production. It lets you also develop and test content in Fabric before it reaches end users. Deployment pipelines can be created using two different methods: using the workspace icon on the left navigation pane inside of Fabric, or number two, using the Create Deployment Pipeline icon at the top of a workspace. Let's look at a few of the implementing deployment pipelines key tasks. Customizing stages involves defining the different environments or phases in your deployment pipeline, such as development, testing, and staging, and even production. This allows you to tailor the pipeline to your workflow, ensuring each stage has its own validations, tests, and approvals to maintain high-quality code progression. Assigning workspace links each stage of your deployment pipeline to specific environments where the code will be deployed and tested. This ensures that changes are deployed to the correct environment at each stage, maintaining a clear separation between development, testing, and production environments. Comparing changes involves reviewing the differences between the current state of the code in one stage and the proposed changes in the next stage. This step is crucial for identifying potential issues or conflicts before deployment, ensuring that only intended changes are moved forward. Deploying changes across stages involves moving code from one stage to the next, following that predefined pipeline. This includes running tests, validations, and approvals at each stage, ensuring systematic and safe promotion of changes through the pipeline, reducing the risk of errors, and maintaining quality standards. Deployment pipelines can be used with Git branches. This would be used to promote content between development, test, and production environments when content for each environment resides in different Git repositories or branches. To use deployment pipelines with Git branches, first, create a deployment pipeline to assign each stage to a workspace. Next, assign each workspace to a deployment pipeline to a Git repository and branch in Git Integration in the workspace settings. Next, promote content between staging environments using the Deploy button in the pipeline. This moves content between the environments in Fabric, but the Git repository won't be updated until you manually update from the workspace. Next, in the image below, we can see a data pipeline item exists in all three staging environments of the deployment pipeline in Fabric, and that the Fabric stages are synchronized, as we can see with the green circles and the white check marks between the stages. Lastly, to synchronize the repository with the test workspace, select the Commit button in the source control window that is shown here, that was shown in the preceding image. Fabric REST APIs allow you to automate Fabric procedures and processes, improving efficiency and productivity. REST APIs stand for Representational State Transfer Programming Application Interface. REST APIs are used to manage and interact with various Fabric services. Some of the advantages of using the Fabric REST APIs are automating repeat processes with consistency, making it easier to perform data processing on an ongoing basis, and seamless integration with other systems and applications, providing a streamlined and efficient data pipeline. Fabric CICD REST APIs are available for deployment pipelines in Git Integration. Use the Fabric CICD REST APIs to commit the changes made to the workspace to the connected remote branch, or to update the workspace with commits pushed to the connected branch, or to see which items have incoming changes and which items have changes that weren't yet committed to Git with the Get Status API. It can also be used to list deployment pipeline stage items or to deploy stage content and more. Now let's see how to implement deployment pipelines in Microsoft Fabric.
Now we are ready for our next lab. This is Implement Deployment Pipelines in Microsoft Fabric. What we're going to do is we're going to start off first creating some workspaces. There are 3 workspaces that we'll create. One of them will be a development workspace. This will be the workspace where we store all of the information and our, of course, lake houses, warehouses, data flow Gen 2s, our pipelines that we are currently in developing, maybe our notebooks also. Anything that we'd like to kind of walk through this pipeline, have it developed, have it tested, and then have it rolled out into production. So we have that workspace there. And that should hold, objects that we'd like to develop. But we're also going to make 2 more. We're going to make another workspace that will hold the information that we are trying to test. So our lake houses, warehouses, our data flow Gen 2s, our notebooks, anything that we're trying to test will go into our test workspace. And then we're going to make a final workspace called production. And our production workspace is where we're putting it into production after we have developed it and tested it. So what we're going to do is we've made our workspaces. Now we're going to go ahead and do the deployment pipeline. So I'm going to go into workspaces, and you may have noticed it down here, deployment pipeline. I'm going to make a new pipeline. I'm going to call it deployment pipeline. You can call it really anything you'd like to call it. So I'll make this our deployment pipeline. And I could include, of course, a description. Maybe it's a deployment pipeline for a particular app or a particular code that we're trying to roll out. So I could do that. I'm going to click on Next. And notice it has 3 default stages that you can work with. So deployment, test, and production. And we're going to go ahead and go with these, but I could edit them, as you can tell. I could add additional steps if you want to do that. But these are kind of the default that a lot of people work with in our deployment pipeline. So we're going to go with this. I'm going to go ahead and click on Continue and Create there. And what I'll do is then look at each of the 3 stages, and I'll assign it the workspace that I created for it. So we have a stage called Production, and that we would like to associate to our production workspace. I also created Test, as you saw. We'll add that test workspace to our list here. And then our development workspace we can add here. But whatever we put in development is what we would like to, work on. It's something that we're currently trying to perfect. A lot of the different objects that we could have here in Fabric can go in it. So not every object can go into this pipeline process. So I want to show that, like, instead of choosing the development workspace, I'm going to choose my lab for my lab 2 here that we used a little earlier. And I'm going to assign each one to the workspace to the pipeline stage. Now, what you'll note with this is that it's telling you, hey, there's a few things that are not supported in that workspace, and that may come up. We may want to take a little deeper dive in there, but there are a number of objects that are supported. So I wanted to highlight that, and you can see what is supported there. And then for the test phase, I'm going to go ahead and assign that workspace. So we have that set up. Then I'm going to go ahead and assign the production workspace to the production stage so that we have that set up. Now, what I want you to note is that some of these are all a little bit of a different color. So you can tell we're starting from here. You can see what we currently have. And what I'd like to do is, go back in, make changes to this information, get it ready for production. But before we put it in production, we want to test it. So it's been in development for a little bit, let's pretend. And then going forward, we'd like to be able to test this information. So we're going to move it from the development workspace or stage into the test workspace or stage. So here at test, notice it shows me what it doesn't have. So from from development. So I can choose the objects that I want to pull across from development. I can select those, and I can deploy them now into test. And it's showing me there might be a few little issues with this. You're about to deploy from development into test. The items that are going to be deployed are, and it shows you it's essentially what I selected over on the left-hand side. So I could have selected something less than what you have there. I didn't have to select all the objects, but I selected everything that was here. So you could do partial or you could do full. I'm going to go ahead and click on deploy, and that will move those items now. Put a copy of them there and move them into test so that we have them there to use. Now, once they're in test, this is where I'm going to go out and I'm going to make certain everything is working. I'm going to make certain that, I try to break it if I can to do typical things that, it may encounter that could cause it to go, and not work anymore, to be unfunctional. So what I want to do with this is when I have it here in test is spend a lot of time, going through and testing it. I go out to the workspace and I can do it there. But then once I've tested it and I made certain that we worked out all the kinks, maybe we had to push it back into development simply because there were certain parts of it maybe that didn't pass our testing. So I may have to do that. But what I want to do from here is get this into production. So it's been tested. We've worked out all the kinks. Maybe we went back and forth a couple times with development, but now we're ready to push it into production. So I'm going to choose production. Then I'm going to again choose what I'd like to have deployed into production. And then I can go through that process here and deploy it out to production. So you can see this is very easy to do. It creates the 3 stages. You can add more. And then you need to create the workspaces to hold the information that's going to be in this stage. And then what it will do is it will let you progress along here, going from development, publishing to test so that you can work out the kinks, and then from there going into production so that people can use it. So this is hopefully helpful here, seeing the process. And as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. So hopefully this helps. Thank you. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you in our next section.
Now it's time for our knowledge check. Question 1. What is the role of Git in the CI/CD process in Fabric? Answer: Git lets your team collaborate using branches and provides version control. It helps manage incremental code changes and the ability to see code history. Question 2. What is the purpose of connecting a Fabric workspace to a Git repository? Answer: to sync content between the workspace and Git, ensuring that they have the same content. Question 3. What is the primary function of deployment pipelines in Fabric? Answer: deployment pipelines automate the movement of content through the development, test, and production stages. To recap, we discussed continuous integration and continuous delivery, its best practices, and how to implement it in Fabric. We also discussed how to commit and sync changes and work with branching scenarios. We also took a closer look at how to implement deployment pipelines and how to use deployment pipelines with Git. Lastly, we discussed how to automate with Fabric REST APIs. For more information on how to implement continuous integration and continuous delivery, or CI/CD, in Microsoft Fabric, please see the link shown here.